Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice little 5-game college basketball slate for you. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? I'm also going to do the NBA slate after the college basketball one, so stay tuned for that. So we have 5 games in this college basketball slate here. We have Duquesne versus Bradley, Central Florida versus Maine, Michigan State versus Oakland, Arkansas Little Rock versus Murray State, and Fresno versus Portland State. The Arkansas Little Rock Murray State game is a 1 point spread with 151 point total. That is the closest game and the biggest total. And then we have the biggest spread is Michigan State versus Oakland, and Michigan State's favored by 16.5 points. And that has one of the lower totals at 137. Only Central Florida and Maine, which a 13-point spread, has a lower at 134. The other 2 games are at 141 points. That's Duquesne, Bradley, and Fresno State, Portland State, and both those games are 2.5 and 3.5 point spreads respectively. So overall, we do have some injuries here, but we'll go through those as we go through the games. We do have 4 core plays, one being Mario Ellis here, Kellen Tynes, Isaiah Johnson, and Marcelius Avery here. So we'll explain those as I go through each game. So we're going to start with the main Central Florida game. Now this is a 13.5 point spread in Central Florida's favor. There's a 134 point total, which is the lowest on the slate. So I do have some information here for Central Florida's situation. Um, you're going to notice that I do have Avery as a core play today. He's played excuse me, pretty solid throughout the season. He does have some ups and downs, but he definitely has some potential here. He does have a lower floor than I like, but there's not a whole lot of great options on the slate, and so this is a good option for this particular team, and they are favored to win the game, so he should have an upside game from that perspective, get around 25 or so minutes, and be able to score over 20 fantasy points. Then we're going to look at that's for UCF. Then we're going to also look at Jalen Sellers here for UCF. Now he draws some good upside in this game as well. He definitely has low floor and he is scoring dependent the last few games, but he does have potential at this price point. Though again, he's a little expensive compared to what I would like. But if you think UCF can handle this game but not get too out of reach, then he'd definitely be in play. Darius Johnson also potentially in play here. He's played pretty good in a lot of games, but he's had a couple off games. His floor is low, but his ceiling is solid, and so he's definitely a playable option on the slate. He's been good in 4 of the last 5 games as well, and so he's definitely in play. Looking at Maine, now this is where it gets a little tricky. So Tynes is a core play for me for Maine, despite the fact that they're likely to get beat pretty good. He's got a pretty high floor. He's played very well. He does have some risk here, but he's been playing very well last few games, and he should get over 20 or so fantasy points at minimum. He does need to get about 26, but he's been over that quite a few times this season, and actually has a pretty high ceiling. The only real bad game he had was at the first game of the season, rather, where he's under 20 fantasy points. But I think he's a pretty safe play on this particular slate, though he does carry some risk. Um, then we're going to look at the biggest question of the day, and that is going to be AJ Lopez for Maine. Now, he hasn't played in 6 games, but when he did play, he played really well, and he's probably going to be pretty popular because of his price. The question is if he's going to play or not, and there's no telling. It doesn't appear that he'll play, I guess, because he hasn't played in 6 games, and there's no news as to why. But it's definitely possible that he could play, and if he was to play, he would definitely be somebody to be considered at this price point. Looking at Bradley and Duquesne, now this game is a 141 point total with a 2.5 point spread in Duquesne's favor. For Bradley, we'll start with them. Hickman is going to be out. He is saying questionable here on DraftKings, but he is ruled out. Um, okay, it just changed it. So anyhow, he is ruled out. Ellis is going to get a big bump here. He is a core play for me as a result. He played very well in the 2 games he played. He scored at least 10 fantasy points in both, which he doesn't need a lot more than 10. He probably needs about 15 to pay off here, but he got 21 against the next game, and he should be similar to that. He does tend to be a little scoring dependent, but he's capable of decent games when he gets the minutes, and so I definitely like him as a core play on the slate, and he's nice and cheap. As uh, Otherwise, for them, Leon's is also in play. Now, he's fairly expensive, but he's had some good games throughout the season, and he definitely has a little bit of a boost with Hickman potentially being out. So I do think he's a viable option here. Looking at Duquesne, now again, they are favored to win this game, and they do have a couple guys that I think are useful here. But Jimmy Clark being one at 7,200 at $8,200 is pretty expensive, and his ceiling is a little bit just slightly above what he needs to 4x here. But he's definitely capable, and so he does draw some potential in this one. I'm also going to look at uh, Drame. Now this is Pisani Drame. Sorry for butchering your name. Number 34 at $5,700. He definitely has a very low floor, but his price is honestly okay for this matchup. He's played pretty well most games this season. Again, he does have a low floor when he sometimes gets into uh, either foul trouble or limited minutes, but he's definitely capable of a solid game here, and especially in a game where they're favored to win. So I do think it's a viable option there. But he definitely does carry some risk, so to keep that in mind. Looking at the Michigan State Oakland game, there's nothing from Oakland that is even remotely reasonable, as they are extremely overpriced for what they're doing, and they have a very ugly matchup here against Michigan State, who's probably going to put the screws to them early and often. So I do like a couple guys from Michigan State, but they do carry some risk due to the blowout potential here. Tyson Walker obviously has played very well for them this season, though he does have a low floor. His price is still pretty decent, so even though it's come up quite a bit. His price is decent for this game, so he's definitely worth a look, though he does have that blowout risk. Hoggard has played very well the last few games. I really didn't. I really thought about not using him as a play option, but the thing is, he should score at least 20 fantasy points. Now, his total price point requires him to get in the 26 to 28 range to pay off for us. And while he's not doing that every game, he is capable of it. He is in play simply because he has that potential, and the price is pretty fair for consider the fact he's going to score at least 20 or so fantasy points, and that will give him enough to be worthwhile for our lineups. But it's still risky from that perspective. Looking at Murray State and Arkansas Little Rock, this has the highest total spread on the slate at 151 points. It also has the best, tightest game at just a 1 point total, or a 1 point spread for Murray. Excuse me. This game definitely carries some risk, however, as I felt like from Murray State's perspective, they're a little bit overpriced here, which is definitely an irritation. But Brian Moore Jr. is in play for them, and where is he at? Yeah, okay, sorry. He's in play due to his price point. He's one of the few guys that seems to be priced relatively fairly. However, he has had a couple rough games. He started the season really solid, but the last few games he hasn't played as well. And now I will mention that the Mississippi State game, he got into foul trouble early, so he didn't play very much. But I expect somewhat of a bounce back game and a game that should be higher scoring. The last game they played was a kind of a slowdown game, and he didn't do very well. But I look for him to bounce back here. He's had a few bad games in a, 3 with last 5 bad games, but I still think he has some potential to bounce back here. He does tend to be somewhat scoring dependent, so that is a little bit of a concern. But he can get some assists, and so I do think he's in play, but he definitely carries some risk. Then we're going to look at uh, Arkansas Little Rock, and really Chaplin is my favorite play from this team. He definitely carries risk at his price point, but he should be able to get up and down a lot. He also gets peripheral stats, which definitely help him boost with some blocks and steals and rebounds and assists. So he's definitely capable of a solid game. He's also hitting threes at a pretty good clip, and that should help boost his fantasy potential here as well. His price point is high. He does need 34 fantasy points to pay off, but he's been in that range quite a bit this season, so I do think he's a viable option. Looking at the last game, the Fresno State and Portland. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention for Arkansas Little Rock that we do have a questionable tag here as well, and that is KK Robinson. If he does play, then he could definitely be a great option on the slate, but he's high risk as he's not played in several games. I don't know what the injury situation there is really, so he just hadn't played for several games. We'll have to wait and see, but uh, I did check the team's website to see if there's any information about him, and there's not. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Looking at Portland State and Fresno State, now we do have one injury here, and that's Andre for Fresno. Now Bioki and Calamera would get a boost if he's ruled out. It looks like he's highly questionable for this game, so we just don't have really a whole lot of information about that yet. But if we look at this game, this is a 3.5 point spread in Fresno's favor, 140 point total on this one as well. So for Portland State, I do have one guy that I think is interesting today, That is Isaiah Jackson, who is a or sorry Johnson, who is a core play for me. He's a little bit underpriced for what he's been doing throughout the season. He does have a low floor, but he definitely has some potential in this game, especially with it being close. And as long as he gets the minutes, then he should be fine. But questionable since he has, he's a little bit risky because he hasn't been consistent with the minutes. But I do think he's good enough that he's worth a look here on this one. Looking at Fresno State, we like quite a few guys here for Fresno. Isaiah Hill, one being the best player on their team. He's played very well recently. His floor is a little lower than I like, but he's been good most of the season. And this game being pretty tight should give him an advantage, and he'll get quite a bit of minutes and have a lot of potential here. He does need to get some assists really to pay off here. And then Bayoki, now he does carry some risk as well, but his price is solid, and if Andre is ruled out, then he would get a boost, and so that definitely gives him in the situation. However, he actually did play pretty well throughout the season. His floor is just very low, so do keep that in mind. With that said, guys, let's go and get to the NBA. This is going to be a very irritating NBA slate as per usual, as we have lots of questionable tags, and there's not a lot of value at this point. So let's go to the injury report first. So we're going to get with the Rockets. Thompson is questionable. For the Cavs, Mobley and Garland are out. For the Clippers, Plumlee's out. For the Pacers, Halliburton is questionable, and Smith and Nimhard are out. For the Bulls, Levine is out. Caruso is questionable, and Craig is doubtful. For the 76ers, they're at full strength. For the Pistons, Duran and Stewart are out. For the Hawks, Capella, Bogdanovich, and Hunter are questionable. Johnson is out. For the Timberwolves, Edwards and McDaniels are questionable. For the Heat, Lowry is out. Excuse me. It looks like Bam and Hero are back today. For the Hornets, Hayward is questionable. Washington's questionable. Ball is out, and Williams is doubtful. The Raptors and the Thunder are both at full strength. For the Grizzlies, Smart, Rose, and Kennard are out. For the Mavs, Kyrie, Lively, Green, Cleaver are all out, and then Holmes is questionable. For the Nuggets, Caldwell Pope is questionable. For the Nets, Dorian Finney-Smith is questionable. Simmons, Walker, and Smith Jr. are out. For the Jazz, Collins is questionable, and Clarkson and George are out. Looks like Markkanen is back. For the Wizards, Wright and Shemet are out. For the Kings, Lynn is out, and Fox is questionable. For the Kings, for the Knicks, Robinson remains out. For the Lakers, Wood is questionable, Davis is questionable, and LeBron is questionable, and Vincent is out. So we have a lot of outs today. Our great options today are rather limited so far. Hopefully we get some updates on injuries and have some value open up. We do have a couple value sub $7,000 price tag guys here, but not very much right now. So hopefully that does open up. But we'll go through the guys we do like that are priced pretty fairly. Joker is one of them. He's obviously expensive, but he's played very well and consistent most of the games. The only way to stop him is for the refs to kick him out of the game. And they've done that twice in the last 15 or so games, but he has some good potential in this one, and he's got a favorable matchup in Dallas, as if any matchup for him isn't favorable, but this is definitely one of them. Embiid has also been playing unconsciously lately, playing extremely well. His price has risen as a result, but he's definitely in play here against Chicago. He's been pretty awful lately. The question here is if he gets over 30 minutes, since they had two straight blowouts. He's still managing to pay off with those blowouts, but as he is a usage monster and he gets a lot of rebounds, he's been getting a ton of rebounds. In fact, he hasn't missed a double-double since the 17th of November, so he's definitely capable. Another really solid game here. I like his upside, and it's going to be hard to choose between these guys, to be honest, if you go with the expensive player. Another option you could go with is Shea Alexander, though. He's also been extremely solid throughout the season. He is priced up a little bit higher than I'd like him to be, for considering the fact he has a little bit of a lower ceiling than Joker and Embiid has, but he has just as high as a floor, and he's played very well, and he's the best player in Oklahoma City, and he gets a favorable matchup against Memphis. Trae Young is also in play. Trae has played absolutely great basketball lately. He's only had a couple off games against tougher teams, but this is definitely not a tough opponent for him against Detroit. He should have an absolutely dominating game, and especially if a bunch of guys are ruled out for them, he'll even have more usage than he normally already has. Then we're going to look at Sabonis for the Kings. He also has a very good upside here. He's played very well. He's a little bit riskier than some of the guys that are a little bit more expensive than him, but he's played well throughout the season, and he gets a very favorable matchup against Washington, who has not been able to stop any center for any reason whatsoever. Then we're going to look at Rozier. Now, he is probable today. I don't think he's questionable anymore. He is probable. He didn't really play against Philly. He got hurt or didn't play much, and they got blown out, so he just stayed on the bench. His price is high, but he's definitely worth a look with ball out. He definitely has a tougher matchup today, but he's definitely capable in this one, and so I do think he's a viable option if you want to pay for him. Then we get to some Clippers. Kawhi Leonard is in a really great spot. He's played very well the last 5 or 6 games. He has some good upside as a result, and he's got a really good match appearance to the Pacers, who should be a run and gun team, and that would definitely speed up the Clippers a little bit and give him a lot of upside from the fantasy perspective. He and Paul George have been the best two options. I'm also going to mention Paul George here, as he's played very well the last few games as well, and Harden seems to have taken a little bit of a backseat. And George has been pretty consistent at getting around 40 fantasy points a game for a little while. He does occasionally have random floor games, but he should get plenty of minutes in this one. And assuming that he and Kawhi Leonard do well, I think that would definitely be a possible stack on this slate. Uh, Julius Randle also in play for the Knicks. He's played pretty well with Robinson out. Now he had a floor game against the Clippers, but he gets a nice favorable matchup here against the Lakers, who are, who knows who's going to start for them. But Randall has good upside in this game anyway, and has a lot of potential, and I do like his upside here. Then we're going to look at Vucevic here. Let's see, Vucevic for Chicago. Now he has played better since Levine is out. He's been a little bit more consistent. Now he has had some ups and downs throughout the season, but he gets a favorable, a pretty tough matchup against Philly. But Philly's been pushing the ball a lot, and so he looks like he's going to have some potential. Though I do think Embiid could draw him away from the basket some, but he should be able to get the rebounds he needs and some points regardless. Looking at Claxton for Brooklyn, he's one of the sub $7,000 players I could find today that look remotely decent. He definitely has a favorable matchup against Utah, but he's definitely risky here as he's priced about what he's been most of the season. He does tend to be pretty high ceiling, low floor, and that is a concern, but he's definitely viable here. And then we're going to look at Vince Williams Jr. for Memphis. Now, this is a very risky play, but he's the only guy under $6,000 that I could find that I really decently liked. He's started the last 2 games and he's played well in the last 3. As long as he stays in the starting lineup, he should be a viable option as he's playing well and he's priced pretty cheap. But he definitely carries a risk because they may pull him out of that lineup soon. So, with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.